One thing I've learned, if you don't hold their feet to the fire, everybody gets burned.
Hold on. Before you start waving around that freedom of speech thing, when you're in a crowded movie theater and you scream fire, you better be able to smell smoke. If you come on this radio show and you start saying incandescent things like that, you better have more behind you, pal, than just your thumb. I've been listening to talk radio for years, and one thing I just can't stand is when the host has to, push his way onto people, beat the callers into his way of thinking, extending his ego. Or when the callers call in and say something so outrageous and the host lets it go unchallenged. The sign you're on the road to truth is the lack of contradiction. You want to find truth, you just don't simply believe somebody because of their authority or their degree, or you listen to what they say, you test it against reality, and you hold their feet to the fire.
All right, we are back and we're live. Feet to the fire. I'm your host, James, out the Check the Black Knight of Talk Radio Live. I really slow at work. Containers, I deal with containers and they're down. I just read an article, 40% over last year. So when I do get some early go home time, I've decided to turn that into lemonade, the lemon of no work to the lemonade of doing feet to the fire. Excuse me. So here we are. I want to continue kind of where I was last week. I lost a... Oh, here it is. I was talking about the entropy of materialism, and I went through a bunch of things, and I posted a verse after I was done. I'd mentioned it in the post, and I posted it afterwards. But then I started thinking more about it, and I got some more ideas. And I thought, well, I'm here. I got some time. I'm going to share it, and let's see if that works out for people listening. The idea of one of the things you get trapped in material, you get trapped in the flesh, is the Bible calls it flesh versus the spirit. I like the word materialism in these times for spiritual. Your idea of you're living in space-time that will eventually wear out, whether it be your body or like the sun or whatever. And so what happens? And for the atheist and those who don't think about it, it's, live now, do what you can, eat, drink, and be merry. Tomorrow you'll die and you'll disappear. You'll have no knowledge. You won't be alive anymore. It'll be nothing. So it doesn't matter what you do. You can hurt, harm, and do whatever. Other people just, they want to be that by them, keep their own mind, their own attention, do what they want, not bother people, and yet they still are planning on this. Oh, well. Some are like, well, we'll find out what happens. And throughout the ages, it's Christianity, Jesus is not the only person who talked about it. The idea of building something on the other side, so when you pass, you'll be bringing with you treasures that are already up in heaven. Excuse me. And that is one of the verses I talked about before last week. Why work for riches with that rusts and moths eat, thieves steal, which would be entropy, when you could build treasures in heaven for eternity that go on till the next level of existence. And those who do not do this will still go on to the next level of existence. However, we'll have to work something out there. I mean, a lot of people are very dogmatic on heaven and hell and streets of gold and versus burn of lake of fire and all this. I think they're figurative, but nonetheless, they're very pleasant and unpleasant. So I'm not going to argue about what it is. It's beyond our comprehension. So it's the best they can do is to kind of give you from that particular standpoint at that particular time, give you the best point of view, give you an example of it. And Jesus talks about, you've seen me, you've seen the Father. I think it's another example of in space-time, you can only witness God so much, and with God manifesting through Jesus, the human, God, the Spirit, manifesting, the best we could see would be a human shape rather than spirit. And I mean, anyway, so that's that kind of deal. But what I wanted to continue doing is some of these other things came to mind. I did some looking, and I liked some things. I also want to talk about the helper, which I'm not a theologian by any stretch, and I'm also not tied to a particular sect view of things. I look at it myself straight up, straight on. I look for some help on the Greek and Hebrew to understand what the language is, to give further width and depth to the English and so on. So, I mean, I'm doing this for me because I'm the one that's got to, see God someday. And I have decided to follow Jesus' teachings, and I follow the principles that he taught in there. Salvation is through grace, meaning that I can't earn it. However, Jesus talks over and over and over about how you rewarded for work done here in the kingdom of heaven. Even the idea of the kingdom of heaven isn't just like salvation, being saved. It's actual state, and I'm thinking this is the next level of existence. And in order to, you have to have a certain amount of character. And of course, God gives all the power and the redemptive actions and whatnot to bring it about. So again, you can't boast about it. It's not something you can do. You can't earn it, but you go along with the program and you do what it is. Now, I don't want to get off track here, but that's a whole nother. I did a writing a long time ago when I was a teacher in adults Sunday school in Baptist church. I put together a whole thing about study about the kingdom of heaven. That's when I first understood that it was not, kingdom of heaven does not mean salvation. It's another level after death in heaven, let's say. And I can put that link up to that old text. It's an old text writing back in the day on a Commodore in the 80s. So, but it is there's a Baptist flavor to it, but the principles are true, and I've gone on from there. So we, going back to this whole idea of spirit and the material, Jesus said, he summoned the crowd together, and his disciples said to him, if anyone, all right, see, I'm not good at sight reading, and I apologize. I got a little dyslexia, my eyes pop around. I also put in words that aren't there, so I'm going to do it again slowly. And he summoned the crowd together with his disciples and said to them, if anyone wants to come after me, he must deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. So for whoever wants to save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake and the gospel's will save it. For what does it benefit a person to gain the whole world and forfeit his soul? So let me read it again by putting in a translator. Well, what would be the word? I forgot the phrase now for when you say. In other words, he meant blah, blah, blah. But it says here, if anyone wants to come after me, who wants to follow in my footsteps, follow what I'm doing, right? You have to deny yourself. That is the material. You have to deny materialism, take up your cross, which the cross is things you have to bear, things that will happen because you're in a material world denying materialism. They will be things you have to bear. Take up your cross, bear your troubles. So if you deny materialism and you're going to be bearing troubles and follow me, meaning follow his teachings. You literally don't pick up a cross and walk up to be crucified. It's not sometimes the literal stuff gets a little and kind of goofy. But deny materialism and what comes along with denying materialism. And just think about, your friends are going to go see a pretty raunchy, a violent movie, and you don't want to do it. They're going to be, what's wrong with you? Are you scared? Or are you chicken? Or are you goody two-shoes? There's going to be problems when you follow the spiritual guides and leading and principles that Jesus talked about while living in this material world, which is geared toward the senses of matter. Whoever will save his life, whoever will live the material-based, focused life will lose it because you're going to die. Your life will die. The material is going to die. It's going to decompose. It'll entropy. Whoever loses his life, in other words, they give up things in their material world that they could have done or did or whatever for my sake and the Gospels, Jesus' principles and teachings. You love Jesus, you follow his commandments. It's for his, it's his sake. And then the Gospel, the good news, what it talks about and how we're one with God, will save your life because it will transfer over intact and modified and glorified into the next level. For what does it benefit a person to gain the whole world and forfeit his soul? What benefits a person to perfect and live out a wonderful material-based material life when it's going to die? It's just going to die. And you can have a building named after you, but you're dead and you're gone. Your material life is gone. And you forfeit the spiritual life, the soul, S-O-U-L-E-R, life, that is coming afterwards because you've concentrated on the material, not on the spiritual. So you have this whole, just adds on to what I was saying last week about the idea that when you focus on the material, it will disintegrate, burn, die, steal, rust, be destroyed. It's over. If you focus on the spiritual within the material world and you work toward the spiritual goals in the material world, you will continue onward. You're not going to die. Jesus says, all these people say, you're not going to die, you live forever. That's speaking to your human mind, consciousness, your ego, whatever. When you look and see the dead body of a loved one or an animal or what have you, you go like, they're gone. That's it. They're done. Turn off like a light switch. What is being said here is that what makes you is going to continue onward into the next level, the next life, the next spiritual journey. You will leave behind you some of the aspects of your physical life, usually the actual things based in your body. For example, you got a tick or something, or if you have a disease, or you got a gimp leg or something. You're not going to have a gimp leg in the next world, or you're not going to have that disease in the next world. It'll be left behind because it's with the body. But your consciousness, your mind, your personality, the real you, if you will, especially when you develop the spiritual attitude, you go on. So when you move onward, if you are a carnal or material person, you're not going to be aligned with, tuned into, understandable about the spiritual world. You're going to go there and it's going to, freak you out because you're like thinking about all the material. So now you're in the spiritual world. You don't have those principles ready. And so it's a big freak out problem. You can't go into the quote kingdom of heaven because you're not ready for that next level and whatever. So I'm hearing this thing kick in and out, and I've scheduled this week, this spring, to completely disassemble everything and clean the room and reassemble it. So changing wires and whatever. So hopefully that'll finally take care of things. But when you look in the, I got a quote here, Mark 34. You must deny yourself, take your cross, and follow. So when I looking at in the anyone desires after me to come, that's to follow him, to follow in his footsteps. In other words, you want to focus on the spiritual life like he taught and go on to that. It's very straight forward. One thing I want to say is, it says lose your life. It's interesting. That word, the Greek word, when it says you will lose your life and gain your life, that word is a variant of the word breath in the Greek. I don't ask me to say the word in Greek. I'm lucky I could speak English. But it is to talk about it, the vital breath of life, the human soul. The soul is seat of affections and will, the self, the human person, individual, and often it's translated life and also soul. So you understand that from that is that this is why I'm saying that you yourself, the person that you are in, you go. Right? You will not be lost. You will have put together through God's working in you and you following along with the God. You've got an infrastructure that you could move on. And I think about all the elaborate stuff that the Egyptians came up with, and you go down a boat, you put all this stuff in there so that you can go to the next world. And Tibetan Book of the Dead, they talk about what you could say and do to move on and all this. And it's funny because it's all being done after the fact. It's like, okay, I could do whatever here, but now I got these material things that can help me get there, and I have these words to say that'll help me get there. But in reality, the teaching is you have to live out those principles that are found both there and in greater quality, in greater context of the greater existence that's to come. So it's I don't know. To me, it's comforting to me to hear me, the person, the human being, the flesh and blood human being, when it says you're going to live forever, people just like, well, you're going to live forever. They don't understand that. They just either believe it or don't believe it. I have kind of a working understanding of what that actually is. And I understand why you have to do these things. You have to live your life according to those principles because you're preparing for that next level. And if you live in a carnal way, you're not going to have the infrastructure. You can't, like the Egyptians, you can't just have some words, or the Tibetans, you can't have a chariot or whatever, trinkets that help you get over there, kill servants to go along with you or whatever. It's they're looking at it, see, they're trying to take this carnal material world and use it as a stepping stone to get there, and you can't. You have to bring the principles found, and of course, that's what Jesus taught all of them. I mean, the Beatitudes right there. Right, the Beatitudes is like the greatest assembling of words, and if you look at the whole Sermon on the Mount, it is like, boom, there it is. You have to do that. And people say, I can't do that. Well, this is where you pray to God, you come to God and say, please help me. I can't. The whole idea of Jesus, what he did was his human being, allowing God to come in him and live in him and stuff, and for that sacrifice that he had, literally, in his case, literally was killed. But also, he didn't want to do the carnal things that other people were doing because I was on a spiritual. So his reward is that he will now be the human Jesus is now elevated to the spiritual Son of God type thing, So I want to get too into the theological nut and bolt because there's trigger words in there and people I'm just looking at it as I read it on there. Another whole text here I want to get into is the idea of the helper. Now, again, there's a big theological construct that comes up with the Trinity, the Holy Spirit, God, the Father, Son, Holy Spirit, all that. I don't want to get into that. I don't want to go into any of the, I'm just looking straight from what Jesus taught in the Bible, and I'm just kind of like, okay. So in John 14:16, I will ask the Father, and he will give you another helper. Another helper, I guess, meaning he's one, because the word helper is more of a literal phrase, meaning someone who's going to advocate or help for you or whatever, so that he may be with you forever. Again, the Greek word behind that is ages, the age. He's going to be with you for the age that we're in. When they translate age forever, most of the time it's either an age of ages, or simply age. So, Jesus is saying, I will ask the Father, and he will give you another helper, so he will be with you forever. Because Jesus was talking about, earlier on in the thing, he's talking about leaving, right? So they're getting a little nervous. He's going to leave. Wait, because they've only been there a few years. He says, I will ask the Father to send you another helper, that he will be with you for the whole duration. The helper is the Spirit of truth, again, Spirit of truth. Look, my personal belief of the word prophecy, a prophet or prophecy, is the revealing of truth, or either the understanding of it or the showing a lie, that kind of mechanism. So this helper is going to be the Spirit of truth, whom the world cannot receive because it does not see him or know him, because they're built, again, in the material. They can't see him. They can't get the help from the helper because they're based in the material. They haven't been in, and Jesus talked in John also about reborn into the Spirit. And when you change your focus from the material to the spiritual, that's the spiritual rebirth, because now you have a view of spiritual future. And this is what salvation is. Going from that based in the material and having the world have it die, to the spiritual and moving on. The world cannot receive him because it does not see him or know him. But you know him because he remains with you and will be with you, because they have been reborn to the Spirit. I will not leave you as orphans. I am coming to you. After a little while, the world no longer is going to see me, but you are going to see me. Because I live, you will also live. Again, there's that whole thing with the spiritual life. Even though you can't reach out and touch Jesus, they will still have access to him in the spiritual conduit, the grain, the connection. Conduit's kind of a good one. Lifeline. On that day you will know that I am in my Father, and you are in me, and I am in you. The one who has my commandments and keeps them is the one who loves me, and the one who loves me will be loved by my Father, and I will love him and reveal myself to him. You see that? You follow the teachings, the commandments that Jesus said. You follow that. When you do that, you follow it. There's this. The words that are being used here are love, and I will love him, and I will reveal him to myself. See, there's that spiritual connection that's so important. That's done by following the principles Jesus taught. I mean, unfortunately, when they go into church, everybody's thanking him for saving their soul, meaning not going to hell. But Jesus' vast bulk of his teaching is about living this life a certain way. And now I'm getting into some of the, we'll call it metaphysics, the physical aspects of that. This is what it's for. It's not just do it or I'll beat you, or do it, here's a cookie. It's preparing the soul, the person, the person that was born in the flesh, preparing you, rebirthing you into the focus your consciousness, your alive person, flesh, brainness, onto the spiritual, which will carry you through into the next life. Let me reveal myself to you. If anyone loves me, he will follow my word. Gosh, I mean, can you get more plain? If you're claiming to be a Christian and you love Jesus and you love the Father, you follow what Jesus taught because the Father taught through him. The Father was in him, inspiring him to say these things. Jesus, I tell you, the human Jesus to me, I really admire because he got out of the way. He got out of the way. His ego and all this stuff got out of the way and let God shine through to its ultimate. Now, and Jesus also said, I don't have it up here. A lot of these things come to mind, and I can't give you a verse and title and all that. But he said, no, I just said all that, and I lost the point. See, the stuff comes in, and I got to say it right away. All right, well, it'll come back to me. Gosh, that aggravates me when I do that. See, I just got in the way. I started explaining and setting it up rather than just saying it, and I lost it now. So, obviously, I'm not to Jesus' level of doing this stuff. Anyone loves me, they'll follow my word, and my Father will love him, and so forth. The one who does not love me does not follow my words, and the word which you hear is not mine, but the Father who sent me. I mean, what a great line. I mean, it just says it right there. If anyone loves me and follow my word, my Father will love him and will come to him and make our dwelling with him. Well, wonderful. You see how we're looking into that next level, but it takes our actions. And right now we're in a critical area. I mean, I tend to believe these are the latter days, but regardless, this is true of all days, is that we're in a position now where it's getting very hostile to follow the teachings of Jesus. And if you say anything against the flow of the materialistic world, you're going to lose your job. You're set, and it's probably going to come to the point of even being jailed and whatnot. Other countries are already starting to do that. Just people who are praying in England, quietly standing in front of abortion clinic in England, praying, not doing nothing, closing their eyes, praying, getting arrested. And so it's coming. So this is the point: is that if you're going to be persecuted, you might as well be persecuted for doing what's right. That was a kind of a quote from Paul that I'm just remembering of it. These things I've spoken to you while remaining with you, but the Helper, the Holy Spirit, whom the Father will send in my name, will teach you all things and remind you of all I said to you. I mean, that's a great line because I've listened to the Bible on tape. I mean, I started in the 80s, and I listened to it a million times while I was driving. And I focused more on the New Testament in the last, decade or so. And I've listened to it over and over again. Now, I don't remember the verses. Like, I can't, quote them and stuff and all that. But the principles are in there, and they pop out. Like I just had a minute ago, except I had to talk about it and talk over it and got lost it. So, these are. He will teach you all things, so you will get also more information than what Jesus says, and remind you of all that I said to you. It's fabulous. We each have a connection to God, which is all have it, evil as well, except they're ignoring it or they're God is with us, suffering with us because he's part of us. My personal way of looking at it is that it's all there, but our choices are going to be I'm looking right now because I got an email from, where did it go? Seems like this quote may actually, this verse, verse. Alice is a lady who has been listening she's probably the longest listener. Been back way in the old days. And she sent me this verse. Let me get it up because it kind of ties in what I'm saying here. Bible search, BibleGateway.com. I use that a lot because it's very convenient. I could just type in Jeremiah 10:19 and 19. Because this is woe to me because of my injury. My wound is incurable, but I said, this certainly is a sickness and I must endure it. And I think that not only the idea of life and going through the material world, if you're going through it, that you're dealing with all of this junk coming at you, God's doing it with us. God is going along with us. How we suffer, God is in there with us because of the love he has is beyond description. And he's trying to help you to choose the right path, which makes him different than tyrannists and Satan and whatnot, is that he doesn't make you, because he's got eternity to work with you. So it's not like he's, if you don't get this done. But what's great is that he travels along with you, your sorrows or his sorrows. That's the kind of way you should look at God, not this guy up with a beard up in the sky somewhere, but he's inside you, along with you. You're made of God stuff. The whole universe is made of God stuff. It's like God, to me, God is like both in the universe, of the universe and outside it. When God made the universe, it's of his stuff. He took a piece of himself, if you will, and made the universe. He's intimately involved with all of it. It's his energy that's turning the atoms and whatnot, So the same thing with our consciousness. We have a piece of God. Probably this is one of the arguments people talk about why Satan hates the human so much, is he got a special creation, a special nugget, if you will, of God in us. And he's trying to show how foolish that was because we're all frail and whatnot. And so we have that special connection. And so when we're suffering, so if you have a problem, you're having disease, like in this case, you're having a disease, you're suffering, or you're going through things, just got fired, you got, your spouse left, you got your kids and all this. God is actually going through you with it. It's like if you had another person there in you, all your feelings, all your sadness. This is why whenever you have stuff, you should talk to God all the time. Just talk to him. I literally talk with him out loud. In my head a lot, but out loud too. It's like God's right there with you all the time. This is this idea of the helper who is going to be there. Jesus is making this more effective. Jesus, to me, is a bridge connecting humans and God again because of the gulf that was there. But the good news is it never was a gulf. It's all pretend. It's all an illusion. God isn't away from us. It's intimately in us. And Jesus' work was to teach this as well as show us how to get out of the material trap and into the spiritual foreverness. And so if you think about that, if you keep the idea that God isn't some guy with a beard up in the sky, God is part of you. If you hit your hand and it hurts, God is feeling that pain. When you are happy and there's joy, God is feeling that joy. There's that intimate connection. If you are right now, just the oddness here, you're like an evil person or you're an atheist, you don't believe this and that. You say this stuff, you go, well, if that's true, then I'm really screwed. No, the good news is, boom, on a heartbeat, you start the path back. You open it up and you're there. There is no too late. There is no too far. There is no too bad. You may have consequences of what you have done in this world within the context of the material world, criminal or what have you. But we're going to die from here and move on. It's all going to be destroyed. It's going to rust and moths eaten and criminal steal, and we're going to move on to the real deal. And if you get yourself aligned like that, now you work toward that. So it's kind of like when you get off the bus onto the other side, you already got a working kind of thing going there, and it'll just be wondrous and expand and be bigger as we're more introduced to that expanded consciousness, that expanded awareness, the expanded abilities, creativity, and so forth. A lot of people who take the evil path, that kind of energy is so foreign to them, they run from it. They're scared of it. It would hurt them, so to speak. And thus, the whole idea of the heaven and hell. And so this is why, a lot of my theology, this is why I couldn't really be in a standard church, because I'm going to cross paths with some of these hardened in stone principles, because they looked at the words and legalistically looked at it a certain way, and they're missing a bigger picture. Jesus talked and said that the precepts of men, you violate the precepts of God by following the laws of men or the teachings of men. And this is where you have to get out of that mental, materialistic sense that you can't do good to get to heaven, quote unquote. You have to change your way and be born again into the Spirit. How does that happen? Through the teachings of Jesus, the Helper, and the whole process. And again, right now, if we are in latter days, which it appears to be to me anyway, there's going to be a time when the whistle blows and we're done here, and then you're going to be moved on anyway. So it's best to be on the path. There's no finish gate. You don't have to go like, okay, I have to get this far, or otherwise. That's humanity. That's materialism thinking. You have to say, God, I realize, material's leading nowhere. I'm going to die. There's things. There's that. Look at the world's coming down. The economics, the banks, all this stuff. All the material stuff is crashing. And you can go to God and say, look, I trusted in the material. It's falling around me. Please show me, grow me, take me, love me. That's all. That's it. That's the gospel. That's the good news. Is God's been there all the time. The space between God and us is illusion. It's not real. It feels real. We think it's real. We've been dumbed down. We've been taught. We've been made ignorant of the truth. And, frankly, the churches have helped in that. So this is what this whole aspect's about, is the turning away from the material into the spiritual. While you're in the material, you can do much great spiritual work here than you can there. This is the importance of here. You're put in a material world. People want, there's a tug from the material. We're made of material. We eat, whatever. So there's a tug from the material, and yet we still go to the spiritual. How much greater will it be actually living in the spiritual, having that? So this is the kind of thing when I talk about versus like materialism versus spiritual, and if you lose your life, you'll gain it, and so forth. This is what it actually means. It's not just fancy words. It's when you make that decision to follow the principles of Jesus, and you pray to God to help it, do it, because hey, I'm embroiled in the material here. I don't know how to get out of this. Help me. That's one thing you can bet on, is that if you ask God for help, you will get it. You'll guidance. Ask, it'll be given to you. Knock, and the door will be open. Do you think if your son asks you for a fish and you give him a stone? No. You being evil notice stuff. What about God? And that's what it's all about, is the right path. And the reason, well, why am I going to ask him? Why doesn't he just do it? Because this is the plan here. We're going to go into this area where we're going to have virtually no restrictions. We're going to have unlimited power, creativity, and all this stuff. And if you go there with the material mindset, it's going to turn into a hell. See, now you can understand why someone who's based in material goes into these areas. It's like, hey, I got all the things I can do. Now I can really kick butt. And, so you got to separate them. And this is what this is. We're in this time. We're in this playground to get working this all out. And when we say, look, I want to go, I understand this. It's a dead-end world in the material. I want to go with physical. God, please show me and help me. He absolutely will. And the thing is God is actually kind of clever and funny. It kind of reminds me of like a winking grandfather. Kind of got that little twinkle in his eye, because when God does stuff, it's not like normal. It's extremely complicated and wonderful. I mean, look at creation. Look at the various things, the flowers and insects and all kinds of stuff. We'd all be Gumby and Pokies if it was up to materialism making it. So this is what I'm trying to really exhort in these times: is that no matter what is happening in your life, if you ask God for help. I mean, I had this happen to me a few times. I could tell you times, but it doesn't have the power it does when you're living inside yourself and you've gotten to this point where I don't understand. I don't know what to do. I see nothing but destruction, and you turn it over to God, and all of a sudden little things click here and there. It's like somebody falling down from a building, seeing their, and all of a sudden they ended up getting caught on a branch or something, and it holds them up. This is the kind of stuff. That tree was planted there eons ago. The seed blew to be there. It managed to survive in the urban environment to have the branch there that saves you. It doesn't mean that God said, hey, I'll use that branch over there, and he kind of moves you over to it. No, that was already done eons ago so that tree would be there when needed. It's amazing. This is the way I would think you should look at things, and it puts a whole different spin on it. Now, so far, I didn't crash or nothing here, so I think I'm going to call it a day. I got all my stuff. I got the verses in the just notes, and you can check that out. This should go up to YouTube, and I don't think I said anything in there to get banned. I'm on the edge of being banned there. And then it'll go to the BitChute. There are videos, but there's no video here. This is just audio, but some people prefer that, so I got it set up to go there. So, okay, with that, God bless you all, and hang in there. And, God is the answer for everything. And God has the timing, and it has the cleverness, it has the situation. And for example, look at what happened to some of the people, like, for example, the fiery furnace. And these people didn't get spared from the furnace. They threw them in the furnace. It's like, okay, where was God there? Well, they didn't burn in the furnace. I mean, so you have this, whether it's a literal or a figurative, the point is that no matter what the material world can throw at you, it's only going to do what God sees as for the highest, best good. So sometimes you take it on the chin. You're doing somebody a favor somewhere. It's helping out something. It helps you out. Maybe you needed some changing, whatever. But many times that you don't even know you've gotten saved. This stuff happens behind the scenes. So anyway, I'm going to go. God bless you all. And I'll see you next time. Thank you very much. And have a good one. God is just wonderful. The Ancient One.
Retell your timeless truths. Oh, it's your word. Feet to Fire is a production of IPS Media Works on the OnSync Radio network of stations.